The auctioneer's hammer slammed against the rail, sharp as a gunshot. 3 years old. No family. Do I hear $5? The August sun burned over Dry Creek like it meant to blister the earth clean. Dust rolled through the square and settled in the little girl's tangled hair. She stood barefoot on splintered boards, clutching a headless cloth rabbit to her chest. The crowd stared at her the way men look at a mule with a limp. Why wasn't anyone stepping forward? Silence pressed in heavy and cruel. Going once. Her name was Ellie Mae. At least that was what the paper said. She didn't cry. Didn't beg. She just stared past the crowd toward the wide Wyoming horizon, as if she'd already learned that hoping hurt more than hunger. $5, the auctioneer called again, voice thinner now. No one moved. At the edge of the crowd stood Grant Harper. 38 years old, broad shoulders, weathered face, owner of Harper Ridge Ranch, 20 miles west of Dry Creek. He had ridden in for a Belgian draft horse, strong back, steady temper. Worth every dollar. He hadn't come for a child. He watched as a man near the front spat tobacco into the dirt and shook his head. A woman in a pale dress whispered to her husband, "Look at those bruises. That one's trouble." Grant saw them too, yellow and purple marks along the girl's arms. A thin wrist gripping that ruined rabbit like it was the only thing in the world that hadn't left her. $4, the auctioneer tried. She eats near nothing. The girl swayed slightly in the heat. Still no tears. Something twisted inside Grant's chest. He had been orphaned young. Not like this. Not sold in a town square. But he remembered the feeling of being looked at and measured. $3, the auctioneer muttered. Final call before she goes back. What the word struck like a fist. Grant didn't know where she'd come from, but he knew what back meant in this territory. Cold dormitories, hard hands, no names, just numbers. Going once. His hand lifted before his mind caught up. $20. The square went still. The auctioneer blinked. 20? Grant stepped forward, boots heavy on the dirt. 20. And that's it. No one countered. The hammer fell. Sold. Up close, she looked smaller than she had from the crowd. The dirt crusted her feet. Her dress had once been blue. Now it was the color of storm water. The bruise on her cheek had the clean edge of a hand. Can she walk? Grant asked quietly. I suppose, the assistant said. Grant crouched and held out his hand. You can step down. She stared at his palm like it might bite. He kept his voice low. Just the steps, nothing else. After a long moment, her tiny hand slid into his. Cold, rough, shaking. She climbed down. The crowd watched like they were missing a show. Papers, Grant said. Money changed hands. $20 meant for a horse now folded into the auctioneer's pocket. A document passed to Grant with a fancy word, custody, but it felt too close to ownership. What's her name? He asked. The auctioneer glanced at the page. Ellie Mae. Grant looked at her. Ellie? No answer. He nodded once. All right. His wagon waited near the general store. Yet he had laid a blanket in the back earlier for saddle padding. Now he spread it flat. You can ride here, he said, or sit up front. She climbed into the back without looking at him, curling into the corner. Rabbit pressed tight. The ride to Harper Ridge took near 3 hours. The sun softened as they left town behind. Wind moved through open prairie. Cattle dotted the hills like dark stones. Twice he stopped and offered water. The first time she refused. At the second time she drank in small, careful sips, like someone who had learned that kindness disappeared fast. What's your name? He asked gently. Silence. All right, he said after a moment. Ellie Mae it is. until you tell me different." By the time they reached the ridge overlooking his land, evening had turned the sky gold. Harper Ridge sat in a shallow valley, creek running clear through cottonwoods. The ranch house was simple timber with a wide porch and a stone chimney. A smoke rose from it. Martha Cole stood in the doorway when the wagon rolled in. 65. Strong hands. Sharp tongue. She had raised Grant after his parents died and never quite left. "You're late," she called. "Did you get the horse?" Grant climbed down slowly. "No." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Then what in heaven's name?" He turned and helped Ellie down from the wagon. Martha went quiet. "Grant Harper," she said softly. What have you done?" "I bought her." "You bought? No one else would." Martha looked at the girl, really looked, at the bruises, at the way Ellie stood stiff, ready to bolt. "Well," Martha muttered after a long breath, "don't leave her standing in the yard. Bring her inside before the coyotes think she's supper." Ellie paused at the doorway, like the threshold was a line she wasn't allowed to cross. "It's all right," Grant said. "You're staying here." She stepped in. The house smelled of stew and warm bread. Lamplight painted the walls gold. Ellie's eyes moved fast, measuring exits, counting corners. Martha crouched slowly. "I'm Martha. I make sure this fool eats and doesn't burn the place down. You hungry?" Ellie's gaze flicked to the pot on the stove. A small nod. "Bath first," Martha said gently. "Then food." An hour later, Ellie emerged scrubbed clean, wearing one of Grant's old work shirts rolled at the sleeves. The bruises were worse without the dirt hiding them. At supper, Martha set a bowl of venison stew in front of her. "Slow," she warned. Ellie did not eat slow. She shoveled food with shaking hands, breathing fast, eyes wide, like it might vanish. "Easy," Grant said softly. "There's more." She kept going until she gagged. Martha pulled the bowl away. "Enough, child. It's not your last meal." Ellie froze, waiting. No one shouted. No one struck her. There will always be more," Martha said. Ellie's hands trembled on the table. That night, they made a small bed in the room off the kitchen. A window. Clean sheets. A quilt Martha had stitched years ago. "You sleep here," Martha said. "Door stays open." An hour later, Grant checked on her. The bed was empty. She was under it. Curled tight against the wall, rabbit pressed to her chest, eyes open in the dark. "Leave her," Martha whispered behind him. "She'll come out when she believes it's safe." Grant lay awake long after the house went quiet. Coyotes cried in the distance. The wind shifted through the trees. He had meant to buy a horse. Instead, he had brought home a child with eyes too old for her face and scars he did not yet understand. And as he stared at the ceiling, one question pressed hard against his ribs. Had he just saved her, or stepped into a fight he wasn't ready for? The next morning, Ellie Mae came out from under the bed like a scared animal testing open ground. Grant heard it first, a soft scrape of wood, a faint shift of breath. He didn't rush in. He sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm, pretending to read the ranch ledger. Martha moved slow at the stove, stirring oats, keeping her voice calm and ordinary. "Morning's cooler today," Martha said, like she was talking to a shy colt. Wind's coming in from the west." Ellie appeared in the doorway. Her hair was still damp from the bath, falling in dark waves around her face. She held the headless rabbit under one arm. Her bare feet made no sound on the floorboards. Martha slid a bowl of oats onto the table. "You can sit. You don't have to ask." Ellie didn't sit at first. She watched, measured, looked at Grant's hands, then Martha's. Then she climbed onto the chair like it might throw her off. She ate slower this time. Not slow, but slower. Her eyes kept darting to the pot, the bread, the door, like she needed to know where everything was in case she had to run. Grant kept his voice soft. You can have as much as you want. Ellie didn't answer. After breakfast, Martha handed her a small tin cup of water and pointed toward the porch. You can sit out there. Shade's good. Ellie stepped outside and froze. Harper Ridge opened wide in front of her. The creek glittered between cottonwoods. Horses flicked their tails in the corral. The air smelled like sun-warmed grass and damp earth by the water. It was too open. Too much sky. Ellie stayed close to the wall of the house, pressing her back to it, rabbit tight in her arms. Grant watched from the porch rail. Martha came up beside him. You know what she's doing? Trying not to take up space. Trying to figure the rules, Martha said. Her mouth tightened. Rules for surviving. Grant swallowed. Rules like what? Martha kept her eyes on the girl. Rules like when the hitting comes, and what she has to do to stop it. Grant's stomach turned. He wanted to go to Ellie, to tell her none of that was here. But words were cheap. He'd learned that young. So he did the only thing he knew how to do. He stayed steady. Days slid by in a hard, quiet rhythm. Ellie followed Martha around the house like a shadow that didn't want to be seen. If Martha folded laundry, Ellie watched. If Martha kneaded bread dough, Ellie sat on the floor nearby, silent, studying every motion. Grant tried not to crowd her. He worked the ranch like usual. Mended fence, checked cattle, hauled water, fed the horses. But sometimes he would look up and see Ellie watching from a distance, half hidden behind a post or corner. Always there, always silent. On the 6th day, Grant was in the barn, replacing a broken board in the stall when he heard light footsteps. He turned. Ellie stood in the doorway, backlit by afternoon sun, making her look like a small, dark cutout against the bright world. You need something? He asked. She didn't move. He set down his hammer. You can come in. It's all right. She stepped inside, slow and careful. Her eyes went straight to the board he was fitting into place. Grant tried a smile. You want to help? He expected silence. Instead, Ellie gave a tiny nod. All right, he said. Hold it steady. He guided her hands to the plank. Her fingers were small, but her grip was firm once she understood what he needed. Grant tapped the nail lightly into place, then drove it in. He worked slow, careful not to scare her, careful not to swing too near her hands. When it was done, he leaned back and exhaled. That's good work. Ellie studied the nailed board like it was proof that something could be fixed. Grant said, Thank you. For a moment, her mouth moved, like she wanted to say something and didn't know if she was allowed. Then a word slipped out, almost too soft to hear. Okay. Grant's chest tightened. He didn't make a fuss. He didn't grab her. He didn't celebrate like it was a miracle. He just nodded. Okay. From that day on, her orbit shifted. She started following Grant more than Martha. Not close, never close. But she would sit on a bucket while he sharpened tools. She would stand by the fence when he checked cattle. She would watch him saddle a horse like it was a lesson she couldn't afford to miss. Martha noticed it too. She's choosing you, she said one evening while she washed dishes. Grant frowned. I brought her here. No, Martha said. You're the first man she's seen who didn't hurt her. Grant stared at the water in his cup. I don't know what I'm doing. Martha snorted. Nobody does. You do what you can, and you keep showing up. Grant tried to believe that. Then trouble rode in on wheels. It was the 9th day when the sheriff's wagon rolled up the drive. Grant was coming in from the far pasture when he saw it. Sheriff Wade Hollister sat upright on the bench, hat pulled low. His deputy stayed in the wagon, eyes sharp. Martha stepped onto the porch, arms crossed. Grant slid from his horse and walked up slow. "Sheriff." Wade's jaw looked tight. "Grant," Martha said. "What's this about?" Wade sighed like he hated being here. "I got questions about the child you took from the auction." Grant's blood cooled. "Questions from who?" "The Pine River home up in Montana." Martha made a sound like steam leaving a kettle. "That place has the nerve." Grant lifted a hand to stop her. "What kind of questions?" Wade looked past Grant toward the house. They filed a complaint, saying the auction wasn't legal, saying the auctioneer didn't have authority. Grant kept his voice even. "I have papers." "I saw the papers," Wade said, "but they're claiming it don't mean anything." Martha stepped down off the porch. "They put a child on a platform like a calf, and now they're mad. Someone took her?" Wade's eyes flicked away. "I don't like it either. But the law's the law." Grant asked, "What happens now?" "I have to see the child," Wade said, voice low. "Make sure she's here. Make sure she's cared for. Then I file my report, and the court decides what comes next." Martha's face went pale. "The court?" Wade nodded once. "If they push this, you'll need a lawyer." Grant's hands curled into fists. "They're not taking her back." Wade rubbed his neck. "Grant, I'm telling you straight. Those homes got money and people who know how to twist words." Grant looked toward the kitchen window. He saw Ellie inside, sitting at the table with her rabbit in her lap. She wasn't eating. She was listening and watching their mouths move through the glass like she already understood more than she should. Grant's throat went tight. "She stays." Wade's voice softened a fraction. "Let me do my job, and I'll put the truth in the report." Inside, Ellie didn't speak when the sheriff knelt to her level. She didn't nod, didn't smile. Her eyes slid to Grant like she was checking if she was in danger. Wade stood back up slowly. "She looks better than most children I've seen come out of those places," he said, glancing at Grant and Martha. "I'll write that down." After the sheriff left, the house felt colder, even with the sun on the porch. Martha made tea. Nobody drank it. Grant sat at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of him like they might bite. Martha's voice was quiet. "What if they take her?" Grant didn't look up. "They won't." "You don't know that," Martha said. Grant's jaw set. "Then I'll do whatever I have to." Ellie slid off her chair and walked to him. Slow, careful. She stood beside him, close enough that Grant could see the small tremble in her fingers. Then she did something he didn't expect. She reached out and touched his hand, just her fingertips against his knuckles, light as a feather. Grant didn't move, didn't speak. He let her touch stay there as long as she needed. Martha watched, eyes shining and hard at the same time. Outside, the wind moved through the cottonwoods. The creek kept running like it didn't care about courts or papers. Ellie pulled her hand back, then looked up at Grant. Her voice came out thin, like it hurt to use. "They take me?" Grant swallowed. "They might try." Ellie's eyes didn't change. No tears, no begging. Just that odd emptiness trying to swallow her whole again. Grant leaned forward, keeping his voice steady. "If they try, I'll fight." Ellie stared at him, like she'd heard promises before and watched them break. Then she whispered the only word she seemed to trust. "Okay." But the way she said it didn't sound like belief. It sounded like a test. And Grant knew, deep in his bones, the real fight was only starting. The court summons came 6 days later. Grant found it nailed to the porch post like a warning. The paper flapped in the wind, white and clean against old wood. He read it once, then again. Each word felt colder than creek water in winter. Pine River Home was asking the territorial court to return one female child, age 3, unlawfully removed from institutional care. Martha snatched it from his hand and read it with her lips pressed tight. Unlawfully, she spat, after they stood her up on a platform like a sack of grain. Grant stared past the yard, past the corral, to where Ellie watched the horses from behind the fence. She was still learning what safe meant, still learning what a full belly meant, still sleeping with one ear open. They're calling it kidnapping, Grant said. Martha crumpled the paper in her fist. Then we fight. Grant nodded once. I'll find a lawyer. 2 days later, he rode into Dry Creek and climbed the stairs over a saddle shop to a small office that smelled like ink and dust. The lawyer's name was Addison Price. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, hair pinned back tight. Her desk was crowded with papers and law books like stacked fence posts. She didn't offer a smile. "Mr. Harper," she said, "tell me everything. Don't make it pretty." Grant told her about the auction, the bruises, the rabbit with no head, and the way Ellie ate like someone would steal her bowl, the way she slept under the bed, the word back, the way his hand went up before he could stop it. Addison wrote fast. When he finished, she set her pen down. "You're fighting an institution," she said. "They have money. They have paperwork. They have friends in the right places." Grant's jaw tightened. "And Ellie has me." Addison looked at him for a long moment. "The court will ask why a single man wants a child. Because she needed someone to choose her." "That's not a legal argument," Addison said. "Not cruel, just honest. But it's a start. We need proof they harmed her. Not feelings, not guesses. Proof." Grant's voice went low. "Her bruises weren't proof enough?" "Bruises fade," Addison said. "The law likes things that don't fade." So Grant brought a doctor out to the ranch. Dr. Henry Lark arrived with a worn bag and a tired face, and he examined Ellie with a gentleness that still made her flinch. Martha held Ellie's hand the whole time. The doctor's notes turned Grant's blood cold. "Malnutrition," Dr. Lark said quietly. "Old fractures in her arm, more than one. Scarring on her back that doesn't match childhood accidents. This child has been hurt on purpose." Grant's fists clenched. "Will you testify?" "I will," the doctor said. "But you should know, Pine River will bring their own people." "Yeah, their own doctors," Grant nodded. "Then we tell the truth louder." For a while, the ranch tried to keep breathing like normal. Grant fixed fence. Martha baked bread. Cattle needed water whether a court wanted Ellie or not. Ellie changed in small ways. She began sleeping on top of the bed some nights, though she kept the blanket pulled tight up to her chin. She started using a spoon. She spoke more than one word, sometimes two. One evening she held up her rabbit and whispered, "Bunny." Martha smiled softly. "That's right." Ellie stared at it, then asked, "Broken?" "Yes," Martha said. "Broken." Ellie looked up. "Still keep?" Martha's throat tightened. "Yes, child, you can still keep him." The night before the hearing, Ellie woke screaming. Not words, just raw sound. Grant ran down the hall barefoot, heart pounding. Martha was right behind him. They found Ellie pressed into the corner of her room, eyes wide and empty, shaking like a leaf in a storm. Ellie, Grant said softly. It's Grant. You're safe. She didn't hear him. She was somewhere else. Martha caught his arm. Don't touch her yet. Let her come back. Grant stood there helpless while the screaming tore through his bones. Then it stopped. Ellie slid down the wall, gasping for air. Tears ran down her cheeks. She looked up at Grant like she didn't know him for a second. They come back, she whispered. Grant swallowed hard. Who comes back? Ellie shook her head and pulled into herself. The next morning she acted like nothing happened. That was the worst part. Like terror was just weather that passed through and left no marks. The courthouse sat 40 miles east, a brick building that looked proud and cold. Grant wore his one black suit. Martha wore her best dress. Ellie wore a simple blue calico Martha had sewn. Small buttons, clean collar. Ellie held the rabbit like a shield. Addison met them on the steps. They're inside, she said. Pine River brought witnesses. A director, a doctor, a nurse, children dressed up nice. Grant's stomach tightened. Like a show. Addison nodded. Like a show. The hearing started with words that sounded smooth and clean. Pine River's lawyer said the auction was unauthorized. That Ellie was never meant to be sold. That Grant took advantage of a mistake. That Ellie needed proper care. Their director, a woman named Mrs. Halloway, though spoke like she was reading from a church pamphlet. We provide structure, she said. We provide safety. We provide Christian care. Grant watched Ellie shrink in her chair, her fingers dug into the rabbit's cloth. Then Dr. Lark testified. He spoke plain. Healed fractures, malnutrition, scars consistent with repeated beating. This is not accident. Pine River's doctor stood and smiled tight. She's a troubled child, he said. Some children injure themselves. Some exaggerate to seek attention. Grant felt his vision narrow. Addison squeezed his shoulder. Steady, she whispered. Then it was Grant's turn. He stood at the witness stand and kept his voice calm. I saw a child nobody wanted, he said. I saw bruises on her arms. I saw how she held that toy like it was all she had. I paid $20 and took her home. Since then, she's gained weight. She eats every day. She has clean clothes. And she sleeps in a bed. The other lawyer stood and asked the questions like knives. Are you married, Mr. Harper? No. Do you have experience raising children? No. Any training in child care? No. So you think you're qualified to raise a traumatized child? Grant's voice stayed low. I'm qualified not to hurt her. A hush fell. The judge leaned forward. I want to hear from the child, he said. Martha's face went pale. Ellie's hand clamped onto Grant's like it might keep her from falling. Addison stepped forward. Your Honor, she's only 3. I said I want to hear from her, the judge replied. Ellie was lifted onto the chair at the stand. Her feet dangled. The rabbit was in her lap. Her eyes searched the room like she was looking for the door she might need. The judge softened his voice. Ellie, he said, do you like living at Harper Ridge? Ellie stared at the wood grain on the stand. Ellie, the judge tried again. Do you want to go back to Pine River? Her chest rose and fell fast. Then, in a voice so small the room leaned in to catch it, she said, No. The judge nodded slowly. Can you tell me why? Ellie's mouth opened, closed. Her eyes darted to Mrs. Halloway. Her fingers tightened on the rabbit. Then Ellie did something that made the whole room go still. She stood. She turned her back to everyone, and she lifted the hem of her dress. But Grant's breath left him. Martha made a broken sound. The scars covered Ellie's back in thin, raised lines. Some old, some newer. Not random, not sloppy. They were patterned, like someone wanted them remembered. And near her shoulder blade, clear as a brand, were carved letters. PR, the initials of Pine River. The room exploded in gasps and voices. The judge slammed his gavel until the sound cracked through the noise. "Order!" he barked. Ellie's body shook. She lowered her dress and stood there small and exposed, waiting for punishment that didn't come. Martha rushed to her and wrapped her arms around her like armor. Dr. Lark stood fast. Those marks could not be done by a child. Not at this age. Not in that place. This was done while she was held down. Mrs. Halloway's face drained of color. The judge's voice went sharp and cold. "Sheriff Hollister," he said, "do not let Mrs. Halloway leave this courtroom." Wade moved behind Pine River's table, hand near his belt. The judge turned back to the room. "This hearing is suspended," he said. "I am ordering an immediate investigation into Pine River home. All children examined, all records seized, and until further notice, Ellie Mae remains in the custody of Grant Harper." Grant didn't move. He couldn't. All he could see was Ellie's shaking shoulders in Martha's arms, and the way she clutched that broken rabbit like it had carried her through hell. Outside, the sun was setting when they finally left the courthouse. The sky was orange and red, too pretty for what had happened inside those walls. Ellie sat between Grant and Martha in the wagon, exhausted. Her head rested against Grant's arm. Her eyes fluttered shut. On the ride home, Martha whispered, "She shouldn't have had to do that." Grant's throat burned. "No!" When Harper Ridge came into view, lamplight glowing in the windows, Ellie stirred. She looked at the house like she didn't trust it yet. Then she looked at Grant. "You still keep me?" she asked. Grant stopped the wagon in front of the porch. He turned to her, voice steady, heart breaking open. "Yes," he said. "Always." Ellie blinked hard, like she was trying not to cry. Then she nodded once, at the smallest nod in the world. "Okay," she whispered. This time, it sounded like belief. If you love Wild West stories filled with passion and heart, like this video, and subscribe to Wild West Tales of Love for new stories every single day.